Prohibition, the nationwide outlaw of the sale, transportation, and consumption of alcohol from 1920 to 1933. Throughout these 13 dry years, Cincinnati was among the most important cities, as it was a national center for the rebellious bootlegging that defined the time. But what caused Prohibition? To answer this question, we sat down with Jace Wintler. We're here for the interview about Prohibition.
Oh yeah, come on.
Can you tell us a little bit about what led up to Prohibition?
The year was 1919 and I was 5 years old. Prohibition was just around the corner. I distinctly remember one night when my father barged in through the door, the smell of alcohol strong as breath. I was playing with my toys in the living room. My mother, Hilda, ran in and started questioning my father. "Where have you been? It's 8:30 at night." My father said nothing, reaching for the empty bottle of alcohol. He smashed the bottle over my mother's head. My grandmother was there. She called the police, and my mother, in the hospital, joined the temperance movement.
The temperance movement was a national operation which looked upon alcohol with scorn. An example of a specific operation was in Xenia, Ohio, and other places, where women such as Hilda went around on crusades to support Prohibition. We also sat down with Edward Conroy, a historian who focuses on the early 20th century, to discover more about the role women played.
May I help you?
We're here for the interview.
Oh, yeah, sit down.
Why were women some of the biggest advocates of Prohibition?
Women were a large part of the temperance movement. Just think, if your husband came home drunk every day, yelling and beating you, being a negative role model to your kids, wouldn't you want to stop it? The temperance movement was one of the few outlets for women trying to curb the negative impact of alcohol. Women put up signs, had protests, and pressured politicians to create laws against alcohol.
Were there any other groups that advocated for Prohibition?
Of course. One of the biggest reasons for the opposition of alcohol is religion. Christianity was one of the biggest shapers of people's beliefs at the time. In the Christian religion, drunkenness is considered a sin. Because of this, many religious people saw it necessary to support the temperance movement. The women and Christians who supported temperance would come together to form the Women's Christian Temperance Union. This group would be one of the biggest catalysts for Prohibition.
January 17th, 1920, Prohibition goes into effect. Although prohibitionists won their way and people could not buy alcohol legally, a vast and dangerous black market soon emerged. Many alcohol sellers went from law-abiding business owners to law-breaking gangsters. Perhaps one of the most profound gangsters of the time was George Remus, a Cincinnati lawyer and bootlegger. He soon became the richest bootlegger in America and protected his illegal operation by paying off cops. Did the outcome of Prohibition go as Prohibitionists planned?
Well, even though my mother was strongly against the consumption of alcohol, she still realized that Prohibition was not working. Ironically, the consumption of alcohol increased because alcohol was not regulated.
And it didn't help that gangsters such as George Remus would pay off the police. Things just weren't adding up for Prohibitionists. With gangsters on the loose, lots of crime, bribery of public officials, and overall bad temperament, it soon became clear that Prohibition just wasn't working. After years of disputes between both sides, Congress passed the 21st Amendment in 1933, which repealed the Volstead Act and ended Prohibition once and for all.
When things went back to normal and alcohol was legal again, alcohol consumption dropped, and crime did as well. The gangsters produced by Prohibition were either jailed or stopped their criminal ways.
There was a sharp decrease in the amount of alcohol smugglers in my area. Bars were reopened and people rejoiced.
Prohibition nowadays is a memory from long ago, but the lessons should not be forgotten. Although it's not perfect to have alcohol legal, it is the right of the people to have access to it, and the outcome outweighs the negatives that legal alcohol can bring. While they weren't perfect, the gangsters took a stand for what they believed in.